Good evening. Welcome to On Bethel. I'm Paul Zetkowski, your host for tonight's program. Ladies and gentlemen, normally this particular program is broadcasted in Bethel, Danbury, and Richfield. Tonight, we have a candidate for the 5th Congressional District. As many of you know, this particular district is presently occupied by Chris Murphy, a Democrat, and formerly by Nancy Johnson. Nancy was very well known, very well renowned within Congress, and Mr. Murphy is going to be vacating the office in attempting to go and become the U.S. State Senator, which is being vacated by Senator Lieberman. The 5th District, if I can explain it tonight, really it's in the northwestern part of Connecticut. It really consists from an area from Meriden to New Britain, to Waterbury, to the Litchfield Hills, and the Farmington Valley. Tonight's program may be viewed within other municipalities, so this is the reason for this particular introduction. You may be seeing this as On Bethel, but we're interviewing a congressional candidate. Now, many of you are saying, a congressional candidate, why are you interviewing one? Because there is going to be a state central convention who is going to elect an individual for the Republican Party, and there are several individuals who are candidates right now, and you're saying to yourself, how do I get involved in this? Because I'm really not a delegate. Delegates are really basically established by the local Republican town committee. Well, it's very easy, ladies and gentlemen. All you've got to do is go to your town clerk, find out who's on the Republican town committee, and call these individuals up. Tell them who you want to be the congressional 5th District candidate. Now that we've provided this background for everybody, let's introduce our candidate. We have with us Lisa Wilson Foley. Lisa, welcome to the program right here. You know, you've been campaigning for the past couple of months. There were several other candidates who were out there. But tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're going into this business after being in business yourself for many, many years. And as a matter of fact, I believe at one time you were running for a state office.
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yes. Well, you know, I believe our country's at a crossroads right now, and we need a different perspective in Washington. As a mom of 7 children, blended family, as a business owner, an entrepreneur, as someone in the healthcare profession, I believe that I have a different background, a different educational set that we need in Washington. Someone that's actually worked on Main Street and know the difficulties that are comprised of government overstretching, their regulations, their mandates, things like that that I've encountered being in the business sector, that I want to make sure that that voice is brought to Washington.
I see. You know, let's start out with probably the most #1 problem throughout the United States, and that is jobs, the unemployment situation. Tell us, what are some of your thoughts in this particular area? Because, you know, we've heard from President Obama for the last 3 years, you know, things are going to get better. And, you know, we're at this unimaginable number of nearly 9% unemployed, some states as high as 20%.
That's right. Well, first of all, it's not theoretical for me. I've created thousands of jobs. Since 1989, I started my first business, and even in the past 6 months, I've created more jobs than all of my Democratic opponents have in their lifetimes. In June, I opened up an institutional pharmacy. I've hired 43 full-time employees. I just opened up a month ago a laser tag using high-tech laser fun. It's a fun area for inside a bowling center that I own. I understand what it takes to create a business and to create jobs. But our government, through its overregulation, its overtaxation, its over-mandating, is smothering the people that create jobs. And those people are small business owners. They're the mom and pops, they're the family businesses. But because of our government obstacles, they're making it very difficult to create new jobs.
Yeah. Well, you know, I agree with you on that, because we just take a look here in Connecticut. I think, you know, we're like a little less than 9% as far as unemployment. But I always say that number is false, because you have to take a look at those who are underemployed, and especially those who have never been on a payroll. And then you take a look at our last college graduates of last June. How many of them are still unemployed?
Right.
And, you know, whether it's Connecticut or any state, you've got an investment in these people, and they're sitting idly around. This past election season, which I was involved in, I know as knocking on doors, the big thing is employment, employment, employment.
It's what people, that keeps people up at night.
Yeah.
They're fearful for their own job, even if they have one. They're fearful that they might lose it. I know many parents, and I'm one of those parents that have kids that are just graduating from college. We're fearful that our kids are not going to be able to get a job.
No.
So,
the American dream, they're saying, isn't there anymore.
Yeah, and you know, really, when you boil it all down, I am a product of the American dream. I came from a family that was very poor. My mother was our caretaker and our breadwinner. My father passed when I was young, but I had the opportunity for a good education. And I was able to get a job, then get a better job, and then own that job. That's the American dream. But we're losing it. And I am very fearful that our next generation, my kids, are not going to have that opportunity.
So in Congress, you're in Congress. How are we going to reverse this? What's your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we have to stop smothering the people that put the risk out there. I mean, to create a business, there's risk. There's time, there's their personal money, there's their, you know, that ability to actually invest in your idea. But when you have a government that makes it difficult to start a business, when they put so many regulations on banks, banks don't want to loan for your good idea. They only will loan to people that don't need their money. So we need to roll back a lot of the regulations that were put in place, especially over the past few years, to make it easier for the entrepreneur and the small business owner. I talk to manufacturers all over Connecticut, and what do they say to me? Let me do my job, which is creating jobs and putting out products, but keep government off my back. They say, I'm not asking for a handout, I'm not asking for a subsidy. And you know, we're not going to get out of this bad economy by subsidizing, by you know, picking winners and losers. It's going to take time. But if we let the small business, the economic engines, crank that up, we will have maintain the land of opportunity.
Let me throw you a curve here, and I shouldn't do this, but I will. Let's take the individual who was on a job for 20, 25 years. He's 45, 50, laid off, been looking for a job for 2 years, and suddenly the technology has escaped his old job. He's no longer useful. What do we do with these people? That's, you know, I see so much of that.
I meet them every day. I really do. And they do need retraining. They do need retooling. I have a woman that works for me, and her technological skills on the computer, her computer skills, are really way behind the times. If you've been out of the job market for 5 years, the high school kids do it better than you. Actually, my junior high daughter is better on the computer than most people my age if you haven't kept your skills up. So we need to get them trained, and we need to allow companies to perhaps hire them. Maybe it's at a reduced rate, maybe it's subsidized a little bit by, instead of putting money into unemployment, maybe we put money into training and get these people back into the workforce.
Great idea. It's common sense.
It is common sense.
You know, you wonder, where does Washington sit on common sense? Today, I don't see that, especially if I take a look at, you know, the present congressman. I'm going to pick on him a little bit here during the program.
Let's do it.
Mr. Murphy, last term, 98% of the time, he voted with Nancy Pelosi. Unbelievable. I mean, is that being a congressman or a rubber stamp?
That's being a career politician that wants to move up on the ladder.
And he's trying. And he's
trying. So he's going to nosy right up to Nancy Pelosi and make sure that he pleases her.
Anyways, after talking about jobs, he says, let's just take a look at the other issue, which is the national debt.
Yeah.
My opinion, frankly, of Washington, they don't know how to balance the books at all. Presently, I was told the debt is someplace around about 16 trillion, T with a trillion.
Right.
Okay? And it's growing.
Yeah.
They're saying that in a couple more years it's going to be, at the rate we're going, beyond 20 trillion. Now, the thing is that I want to ask you the loaded question. Do you believe in a balanced budget amendment?
I certainly do believe in a balanced budget, but I'm going to just tell you a quick story, okay?
Sure.
And it's something that's really near and dear to my heart, and it's something that recently happened. My mom passed. She was 80 years old, and she passed in August when we're running the campaign, and, you know, life continues,
Right.
even though you're running for Congress. And my siblings and I went to the funeral home, and we had to do the funeral arrangements. Mr. Hearn was there, and he was a gentleman in his 70s. And after going through the arrangements, I pulled out my wallet to write a check out for the deposit. And he said to me, you know, don't worry about that, because I know you were raised right, and you're good for it, the money. And we all looked at him like, what was he talking about? And he said, 35 years ago, your mother came here when you were young, and she was making the arrangements for your father. He passed when I was young. And she didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. But he said, we worked out a plan, and every week she'd go to church. It was right next to the funeral home, and then she'd come here, and she would write a check until she paid off her debt. But yet, my mom knew it was immoral to leave a debt on the table. But our federal government is putting over $16 trillion of debt on the backs of our kids. That's immoral. That's irresponsible.
Yeah.
When we talk about debt, I get all heated up. Because you know what? I was brought up. You pay off your debt, your college loans, your bank loans. The federal government should not put that on the next generation.
Well, the reason why I brought this up, because I was reading, I don't know whether it was the Wall Street Journal or one of these financial newspapers. They were saying that for every $2 that the federal government brings in terms of tax revenue, they spend more than 3.
Yeah, that's right. $1.3 trillion a year is what we don't have. We're spending that more than we're bringing it in. If I ran my businesses like that, or my household like that, I'd be in jail.
You'd be in jail or bankrupt, that's for sure.
Probably both.
Yeah.
Why do we let our federal government get away with it? You know, we already know where some of the areas that we can make some substantial spending cuts. We know them. We've had a bipartisan committee come out and showcase $4 trillion that we can remove from the budget. We know where the money is. We do not have the will to make those cuts, mostly because we send career politicians to Washington. And these career politicians care more about getting reelected. And so they don't want to offend this group, or they're worried about this special interest that gives them the money to run their campaigns. You know, I have not been a career politician. I've not been in any political situation at this point. But I have been meeting budgets, meeting payrolls, dealing with a bad economy, and tightening my belt. I do know how to make the hard decisions and the tough decisions, because that's how we stay in business.
Mm-hmm. Thinking about the way the feds operate right now,
Yeah.
what is one area that you think that could automatically can use some cutting? Have you ever given any thought to that at all?
You know, first of all, I want to look at every department. I think there's waste and you know, inefficiencies in across the board.
Mm-hmm.
In my own businesses, when I took a look, there's certainly, I could find ways to get a red line through. There may be a few areas that we actually need to increase some spending, but very few at this point in time. In particular, I mean, I believe the federal education system, the federal education department is top-heavy. I want to see more money spent closer to the student.
Right.
And so that area...
Well, this No Child Left Behind thing, you know, it's a disaster.
It is a disaster, and we are not teaching to the kid, we're teaching to the test. As a mom of 7, I understand it's difficult to teach kids today. Believe me, my own 7, they all think differently, they all learn differently. But having a federal government way up here dictate and mandate a parent or a teacher directly interacting with my child, I don't think that's right. So there's room to make these cuts.
Absolutely. You know, and especially when we get these mandates coming down from Washington saying to the state, you've got to do that, and the state says, I've got no money, so I'll just tell the municipalities to do it. And what happens? You and I...
Property taxes keep going up.
Up and up, right. You know, so, you know, this all comes down to taxes, which is always a...
Yes, let's talk about taxes.
You know, somebody said to me, he says, you know, if we would just have a flat tax, I was reading one of these economic journals. They says if we would put a 15% flat tax across the board, we would be out of debt very shortly. Too many loopholes. This federal tax code that we have right now, it's you have to be a Philadelphia lawyer if you really want to understand.
Or hire one.
Yeah, or hire one is right to understand it. It's complicated. What are your thoughts about the tax codes or taxes in general? What do we do?
Well, first of all, it is extremely difficult to get through. And I had a personal experience. The IRS came in and audited my companies in 2010. And I brought in, you know, my accounting firm, I brought in my lawyers, I brought in my controllers. It took 8 months, and at the end of 8 months, I got a letter, and it said that the United States government owed me $27,000. Well, you know what? At that point in time, I was so stressed out about this audit. I had spent quite a bit of money, more than $27,000, trying to,
From
you know,
the attorney and accountant
from the
fees.
attorney, the accountant, and time. And I really said, you know, at that point, it is way too complex.
This is not job creation.
No, it's administrative nightmare.
Yeah.
And so I believe after that experience, we really need a simpler, fairer tax code that someone that's running a business can understand and know that they can actually make decisions about how their businesses are going to run because the tax code is consistent. What you said about loopholes, well, I don't know any small businesses that are really getting a lot of benefit from the loopholes that are out there. Loopholes are made for
Large corporations.
big business. You know, our present liberal Democrats in Washington care about big government, they care about big lobbyists, and they care about big business. They don't care about the small family-owned businesses or the 90% of job creators that are out there. So when we talk about tax code, I am all for something that's going to flatten it and make it fair and simple and get rid of all the loopholes that really just create an industry for accounting firms and law firms.
Oh, you know, I think that would be welcomed by a lot of people.
I do.
But the first thing that people are going to say, hey, I want a deduction for my home interest, you know. But you know, under certain circumstances, I'm sure it could be structured that you know depends on your total income value.
Yes.
You know, but the idea, because I read someplace about the 15%. You know, whether it's corporations, individuals, it sort of really flattens out the debt rather rapidly.
It doesn't. It doesn't incentivize companies to go to move their business out of our country so that they can get away from the taxes.
Which is I think you and I spoke about earlier or before this program, is when you have this so-called offshore tax relief to large corporations, whereas you take a domestic corporation who's not offshore, you don't get those tax incentives.
No.
And why should you basically give a tax relief for offshore?
When they don't pay taxes.
Yeah.
We give companies money to move their headquarters out of our country. We allow them to depreciate the expense, the moving expense for them to move to another land. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, that's just taken away, again, going back to our first discussion, jobs.
Yeah, it really is. Jobs, there's a common sense out there, there's a business sense that's missing in Washington. And I hope to have the opportunity to bring it.
Good, good. Glad to hear that, Lisa. Let's talk about another thing which is current in the news. This is what President Obama wants to offer refinancing to allow individuals to refinance their mortgages. Now, I understand that both houses in Congress are opposed to this, on both sides of the aisle, as a matter of fact. But basically, what he's trying to say is that the government should be allowed to intervene in the housing market.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Look, we need to almost pull the Band-Aid off and let the housing market hit its low. So then we can start rebuilding. I don't think the federal government's job is to get between a bank and the person that they lend to. You know, again, with the debt, my mom taught me, you pay off your debts. If you take out a mortgage or a school loan or any kind of loan, a home equity loan, don't expect the government to come in and save you.
That's right.
You know, don't take a loan if you do not believe that you can pay it off.
You know, there's this expression, the American dream of owning your own home. However, is that feasible for everybody? Rent? Yes. Living in a nice neighborhood through rental? Yes.
Yeah.
But if you can't afford it, and what they were doing several years ago, telling people, go ahead, buy it, don't worry about it, we're going to give you some low interest rates. But then it was refinanced.
Yeah. I don't want to tell anyone what their American dream is.
No.
I think for everybody it's different.
Right.
For some people, it's just, I want a steady, consistent income, a job that I never leave. For another person, their American dream is to travel all over the world. It's not only to own a house or a car. So I don't want our federal government trying to pigeonhole us and telling us what our American dream is. Let's leave that up to the people.
Right. Which is talking about mortgages, which is one of my hot buttons. There's two so-called pseudo-mortgage institutions which are federally operated, if you want to call it. It's Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Yeah, Fannie and Freddie.
Yeah. We read in the newspaper that the executives behind these two corporations, which are federally supported, are getting outrageous bonuses and salaries. And yet these are the very same people who have led us sort of astray, if you want to say.
Oh yeah,
with
created this mess. I mean,
created this mess. And Congress did help them out doing creating this
right,
mess.
they did.
What do we do with these two corporations? Should we be in the mortgage business?
No, I think the federal government has its tentacles in areas that it shouldn't belong. We should let the private sector handle things that they do best. Our federal government should take care of our defense, because we can't do it as states. We need a federal government to do that. Shore up our borders, so make sure that we have immigration that we need and want and legal. And we need to make sure that, you know, our infrastructure that goes across the state lines, whether that's high-speed rail or whatever, those are the areas that I want our federal government to do a really good job with. And I want them out of the areas that they don't need to be in, and let the private sector take care of those areas.
Good. Well, let's talk about your Democratic opponent.
Yes.
Now, who is our present House Speaker, Chris Donovan.
Yes.
And, you know, like you, a Connecticut resident, I, a Connecticut resident, I've been watching what's been going up in Hartford, and this man is saying, I want to go to Washington. Let's just talk about some of his results.
Well, first of all, I believe that Chris and I are about as opposite as you can possibly
180
get.
degrees.
We really are. I mean, I grew up in a poor family that we worked hard, and I've been able to have the American dream. He believes that everybody should have equal. The dreams should be the same for everyone, and everyone should have equal. I believe in an equal opportunity for everyone, but I do not believe in equal outcomes. I think that is dependent on the individual. He has been in our state house representing us for over 18 years, I think it is. I have not been a part of the political insider game. I've been on the outside dealing with all the ramifications and the taxes that they keep throwing on us. We just enacted the largest tax increase in the history of our state under his realm. I'm dealing with those high taxes, as are my employees. So when you really look at it, there's so much daylight between the two of us.
Yep. You know, I fully agree with you. You know, I've got to say, under his direction, our sales tax went up, our income tax went up, our corporate taxes went up, gasoline
taxes,
went up.
Yeah, that's right.
Also, inheritance, that's gone up.
Yes.
Estate taxes have gone up. And here's this man who's going, and it's basically, there's one other thing too. If you take a look, under the economic condition of state government, which he and Governor Malloy work together, we're right now the heaviest tax state of all 50 states.
That's right.
Now, I can't see this man in Washington, because basically, you know, I think he's for bigger government, more spending, and this is what we don't need. Yeah,
he's been a nightmare, really, for Connecticut, and he will take that nightmare with him to Washington. We can't let that happen.
Right, right. Let's just talk about a couple of other issues right here, Lisa. There's other Republican candidates.
Yes.
How do you separate yourself from them?
Well, I think, first of all, I'm a female. The rest of them are men.
Oh, good. All right.
First obvious difference. You know, I'm a mom of 7 kids, and that's unique. We don't have a lot of politicians. We don't have hardly any Republicans in Washington that are mothers. I think 10%. I've been a businesswoman for most of my life. You know, I started my first company when I was 29 years old. And that's very different. Most people that have created businesses, entrepreneurs, don't have time to go to Washington. I've been lucky. I've got my family involved in my businesses. Our kids are getting out of school and they're looking to get involved in the family businesses. So I'm at a time in my life where I really can concentrate and focus 100% on making sure that we have policies for that next generation. I don't want to go to Washington to be someone. I'm 52 years old. I've been someone. I want to go to Washington, get the job done, and come back home. I don't know that all my opponents feel that same way.
All right, right. Well, you know, the unfortunate thing, we're just about running out of time right here. What we'd like to do is sort of close right here and just talk to the camera right here a little bit. We'll pick out a camera here, try this one right here, and tell them, talk to the audience there.
Well, I'll just tell you another story. It goes back to when I was 18, and I went into the School of Physical Therapy. And on my first job, I was 21. I got out, and one of my first patients was a man named Sam. He was a 41-year-old farmer, had a massive heart attack, and was in ICU. I got the orders for passive range of motion, which means move the arms around, but no one expected Sam to leave that hospital. 3 days I spent with Sam, moving his arms, not a movement from him. And on the 4th day, there was a blink. And I took that blink as a sign that Sam was going to get better, and I would not rest until he did. And you know, I got that whole hospital around my idea that Sam was going to walk out of there. And 6 months later, it wasn't easy, it wasn't pain-free, but Sam walked out of there. I got him out and recovered with a cane, and I will do that for Connecticut's economy. I will not rest until our economy is off its back and moving forward.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. We might continue this at another session. Lisa, I'm going to say for On Bethel, good night, God bless, see you next week.